I didn't know those 6 minutes of audio would play in front of 200 people who controlled his future. My name is Alina Torres, and for 3 years, I thought my quiet work behind a microphone was just a hobby that would never matter to anyone but me. I was wrong. The notification lit up my phone at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. My husband Marcus had sent me a voice memo. Nothing unusual about that. He traveled constantly for his VP position at Meridian Peck, and we'd fallen into this pattern of audio messages when texts felt too cold and video calls were impossible due to time zones. I almost deleted it without listening. Almost. The preview showed 6 minutes and 32 seconds, long for Marcus, who usually kept messages under 2 minutes. I pressed play, expecting his usual update about delayed flights or boring client dinners. Instead, I heard a woman's laugh, low, intimate, the kind of laugh that happens in private spaces. "God, I can't believe we're doing this again," the woman said. Her voice was young, confident. "Your wife really has no idea?" My hand froze on the phone. Marcus's voice came next, slightly muffled, like he was farther from the microphone. "Elena?" "She's clueless. Too busy with that little podcast thing she does. Talks to herself in the spare bedroom for like 5 subscribers." The woman laughed again. "That's kind of sad." "It keeps her occupied," Marcus said. "Honestly, it's perfect. She's so focused on building her audience," I could hear the air quotes in his voice, "that she doesn't notice I'm building something real with you, Vanessa." Vanessa? I sat up in bed, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The audio continued. They were in a car, I realized. I could hear the engine hum, the occasional sound of turn signals. "When are you going to tell her?" Vanessa asked. "Soon. I'm waiting for the Meridian partnership announcement. Once that's locked in, once I'm partner, I can handle the divorce without it looking messy to the board. Sterling doesn't like instability in the leadership team." Sterling, Marcus's boss. Sterling Chen, CEO of Meridian Tech and the primary sponsor of my podcast. The irony would have been funny if my entire world wasn't collapsing. "You promise?" Vanessa's voice turned playful, flirtatious. "Because I'm not interested in being the side piece forever." "You're not a side piece. You're the upgrade." They both laughed. The audio cut off abruptly, followed by the automated voice, "End of message." I stared at the dark ceiling of our bedroom, in the bed we'd shared for 8 years, in the house we'd bought together, surrounded by the life we'd built, and I started planning. I didn't confront Marcus when he came home 3 days later. Instead, I smiled when he kissed my cheek. I asked about his trip. I made his favorite dinner. "How's the podcast going?" he asked, spearing a piece of chicken. His tone was casual, but I heard it now, the condescension. How had I missed it before? "Actually, it's growing," I said. "I'm at almost 8,000 subscribers now." His eyebrows rose. 8,000? Really? Really? The algorithm's been favoring the relationship psychology episodes. I took a sip of wine, studying him over the rim. Turns out people love stories about betrayal and revenge. Who knew? Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe. Or pity. "That's great, babe. Maybe you'll hit 10,000 someday." 10,000, like it was an impossible dream instead of a milestone I'd surpassed 2 months ago. He didn't even know my real numbers, because he'd never actually listened to a single episode. That night, I transferred the voice memo to my laptop. I listened to it 17 times, transcribing every word, noting every inflection. By sunrise, I had a plan. My podcast was called Unscripted Hearts. I'd started it 3 years ago as a creative outlet, short fiction stories about relationships, usually dramatic, always with unexpected endings. My audience was small but devoted. They loved the raw confessional style, the intimate storytelling. I was about to give them the performance of my life. Over the next 2 weeks, I crafted the episode with surgical precision. I wrote a story about a woman named Sophia whose husband David was having an affair, but here was the genius. I framed it as fiction while weaving in the real audio. I introduced it carefully. So Sophia found this voice memo, my narrator voice would say, and this is what she heard. Then I'd play segments of Marcus's actual audio. To any casual listener, it would sound like actors. Good actors with convincing chemistry and realistic dialogue. But to anyone who knew Marcus's voice, really knew it, there would be no mistaking it. I spent hours in our spare bedroom, the same room Marcus had mocked, editing the episode. I isolated the audio segments. I added ambient sound effects to mask the car noises, making it seem more like a studio recording. I even pitched Vanessa's voice slightly to add to the performance quality. The episode was titled The Voice Memo That Changed Everything. I scheduled it to drop on a Thursday morning. Marcus would be at Meridian's quarterly leadership summit that day, a massive event where all department heads, board members, and key sponsors gathered for presentations and strategic planning. Sterling Chen would be there. So would the entire executive team. And thanks to a partnership I'd secured 3 months earlier, every attendee would receive a welcome package containing branded headphones and a curated playlist of recommended business and lifestyle podcasts to listen to during breaks. My episode would be first on the list. "You seem happy lately," Marcus observed one morning, looking up from his phone. I was humming while making coffee. I turned to him with a genuine smile. "Do I?" "Yeah, different. More confident or something." "Maybe because my podcast is doing well. I'm getting sponsor interest. Real money." He nodded absently, already back to scrolling. "That's good. You deserve a win." A win. Like my work was a lottery ticket instead of something I'd built with 3 years of consistent effort. "Actually," I said carefully, "Sterling Chen's company is one of my sponsors now. Meridian Tech." That got his attention. His head snapped up. "What?" "Yeah, they reached out 2 months ago. They're sponsoring a whole series on workplace dynamics and professional relationships. Isn't that wild? Your company's sponsoring my little podcast." I watched the calculations happen behind his eyes. Concern? Suspicion? But then his corporate smile slid into place. That's great, Elena. Really great. I'll mention it to Sterling." "Oh, he knows. We've had several meetings." The muscle in his jaw twitched. "You've met with my boss?" "Well, he's my sponsor. We've discussed content strategy, audience metrics, that sort of thing. He's actually a fan of the show. Said he listens during his commute." I wasn't lying. Sterling did listen. He'd told me so during our last sponsor meeting, praising my psychological insight and narrative instinct. He'd even asked me to create a special series about trust and communication in professional relationships. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw Vanessa's name flash on the screen before he quickly turned it over. "Work stuff," he muttered. Of course. The week before the summit, I started having second thoughts. Not about exposing him, I was past that, but about the method. What if I was wrong? What if this backfired? What if... My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Elena Torres?" A woman's voice. Professional, uncertain. Speaking. "My name is Rachel Whitmore. You don't know me, but I think we should talk. It's about Marcus." My blood went cold. "I'm listening." "I was engaged to someone at Meridian Tech 2 years ago. Marcus was his mentor. They traveled together constantly. And then I found out my fiancé was having an affair." She paused. "With Marcus." The room tilted. "What?" "Not a physical affair, an emotional one, I think. But Marcus convinced him that I was holding him back, that I was too traditional for his ambitions. He helped my fiancé craft the breakup email. I found drafts on his laptop with Marcus's comments all over them. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I saw your episode announcement on social media, the voice memo that changed everything, and I remembered that Marcus used to send my ex voice memos, coaching him, telling him how to hide things from me, how to plan his exit strategy." Her voice hardened. "I think Marcus enjoys this, the manipulation, the control. And I think you're about to expose him, and I wanted you to know you're not wrong to do it." After we hung up, I sat in the spare bedroom for an hour, staring at the audio waveform on my screen. I wasn't wrong. I wasn't crazy. I was just done being quiet. The morning of the summit, Marcus left early. He was giving a presentation on building trust through transparency at 2 p.m. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. "Big day," he said, kissing my forehead. "Wish me luck." "You won't need it," I said. "You're very good at presentations." My episode went live at 6 a.m. Pacific time. By 8 a.m., it had 5,000 downloads. By 10 a.m., 15,000. The comments started rolling in. "Holy shit, this is devastating. Please tell me this is fiction because I can't handle this being real. That man's voice sounds so familiar. Wait, is this the Meridian Tech Summit? I'm here right now, and someone just said..." That last comment made my heart stop. Someone at the summit had recognized something. I refreshed my analytics obsessively. 20,000 downloads. 25,000. The episode was spreading through tech industry social media like wildfire. Multiple people were asking if it was real, if David was actually someone they knew. And then my phone rang. Sterling Chen. "Elena." His voice was carefully neutral. "Are you available to talk?" "Of course. I'm at the summit. I just listened to your new episode during a break. The one with the voice memo?" Silence stretched between us. "It's a powerful story," he said finally. "Very authentic. Thank you." "Elena." He paused. "That voice in the memo? I've worked with someone who sounds exactly like that for 6 years." My hand trembled. "It's fiction, Sterling, inspired by real psychology, but I'm not asking you to confirm or deny anything, but I want you to know that if this story were real, if that voice belonged to someone in a position of leadership at my company, someone who had betrayed not just his partner, but the values we claimed to represent," he exhaled slowly, "there would be consequences." "I understand. The leadership session starts in an hour. There's a segment where we discuss company values and personal integrity. I'm considering playing your episode as a case study to discuss how betrayal manifests in professional contexts. Would you have any objection to that?" I closed my eyes. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward, and suddenly it felt massive and irreversible and terrifying. "No objection," I whispered. Marcus called me at 1:47 p.m., 13 minutes before his presentation. "What the fuck did you do?" His voice was shaking with fury. "I don't know what your fucking podcast is playing in the main auditorium. Sterling is using it as a teaching moment about ethical leadership. And Lena, people are recognizing my voice. Marcus, do you have any idea what you've done? This is my career. This is my partnership. This is..." The line went dead. I imagined him in some hallway, panicking, trying to figure out how to spin this. But there was no spin. Not for this. My phone started buzzing with notifications. Someone had screen-recorded Sterling's presentation and posted it to LinkedIn. The video was already going viral. In it, Sterling stood on stage, the audio playing through the auditorium speakers, 200 leaders sitting in silence, listening to Marcus's voice say, "She's clueless, too busy with that little podcast thing she does." When the audio ended, Sterling had looked directly at the camera. "This is fiction," he said slowly, "but fiction reflects truth, and if anyone in this room has ever treated their partner with this level of contempt, if anyone here has ever mocked someone's passion while betraying their trust," he paused, "you don't belong in leadership. Not here, not anywhere." The camera panned across the crowd. I could see Marcus in the third row, his face ashen, people around him leaning away slightly, putting physical distance between themselves and the man whose voice they'd just heard. Marcus didn't come home that night, or the next night. On the third day, I received an email from a lawyer. Divorce papers were being prepared. He wanted to handle this quietly, but there was no quiet anymore. The episode had been downloaded over 500,000 times. The story was picked up by business ethics podcasts, relationship advice platforms, and even a major tech news outlet that wrote about the podcast that exposed corporate hypocrisy. Vanessa reached out through Instagram. A single message: "He told me you were boring. You're not boring, you're terrifying. And I respect that." I didn't respond. Sterling called one more time. Marcus resigned this morning. He won't be pursuing the partnership. The board felt that someone who demonstrated such a fundamental lack of integrity in their personal life couldn't be trusted with fiduciary responsibility. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "Don't be. You did us a favor. We're doubling your sponsorship, by the way, and I'd like to commission a series on authentic leadership." My subscriber count had exploded to 300,000. Interview requests poured in. Podcast networks wanted to sign me. A literary agent asked about book rights. None of it felt real. 3 months later, I sat in the spare bedroom, the same room where Marcus had mocked my dreams, recording a new episode. My Patreon had 15,000 paying subscribers. I'd quit my day job. The podcast was my full-time career now. "This is Unscripted Hearts," I said into the microphone, "and this is Elena Torres." I paused, gathering my thoughts. People ask me if I regret what I did, if I feel guilty about exposing Marcus so publicly. The truth? I don't feel guilty about exposing a betrayal. I feel guilty that I stayed quiet for so long. That I let someone diminish my work, my passion, my voice. I glanced at the wall where I'd hung a framed comment from a listener. "You taught me that staying silent is not the same as keeping the peace." Marcus called me last week. He's working at a startup now, something in HR software. He wanted to tell me he's in therapy, that he understands now what he did wrong, that he's sorry. I smiled, even though no one could see me, and I told him I appreciate that. I hope therapy helps him. I hope he becomes a better person. But I also told him that his growth isn't my responsibility. His healing isn't my burden. I did my work, the work of refusing to be made small, the work of choosing myself over his comfort. I leaned closer to the microphone. Because here's what I learned. I didn't destroy his career. He destroyed his career the moment he chose betrayal. I didn't ruin his life. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his choices. The recording light glowed steady and red. And to everyone listening who's been told their dreams are too small, their passions too silly, their voice too quiet, you're wrong. You're not the problem. The people who need you to stay small are the problem. I took a breath. This is Elena Torres, reminding you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop being silent. Thanks for listening to Unscripted Hearts. I ended the recording and sat in the quiet of the room that was no longer a spare bedroom, but a studio, a space where my voice mattered, where my truth had power. My phone buzzed. Rachel Whitmore had sent me a voice message. I pressed play. "Elena, I just wanted to thank you. After your episode went viral, 3 other women reached out to me. All of them had similar experiences with Marcus. We're starting a support group, and I'm launching my own podcast about recognizing manipulation patterns in professional relationships." She laughed softly. "Turns out we all had voices that deserved to be heard. We just needed someone to show us it was okay to speak." I saved the message and opened my episode planner. I had 23 new stories to tell, all from listeners who'd found the courage to share their experiences. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across my desk. I didn't feel like the same person who'd listened to that voice memo at 2:47 a.m. I wasn't the woman who'd made herself small to accommodate someone else's ego. I was Elena Torres, podcast host, truth teller, storyteller, and I had 600,000 people waiting to hear what I'd say next. I hit record. Episode 147, I said. This one's called The Woman Who Refused to Whisper. Let me tell you about someone who decided her voice was more important than his comfort. The red light glowed, and I began.
You've just stepped into her revenge side, where every wound finds its justice, and every silence ends with truth. If her story struck a chord, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive. Another secret waits in the next video. See how her revenge begins.